We are going to be working on Canson Me10s. Now this looks like it's white. It's not. I'll show you a piece of white paper next to it. That's white. This is actually a very, very pale gray that I'm working on. This is the smooth side. Now, often I tell you when I'm working with pan pastels or I'm working with charcoal, I'll work on the rough side because it's got a bit more tooth. It's grippier. Pan pastels I'm finding stick so well it doesn't even matter, so I'm using the smooth side since I'm going to be doing all the detail work on the butterfly. That will make that come out clearer. The reference photo for this is over on my website, lachri.com. The direct link is in the video description, so if you want to draw this along with me, go head over and get that. This is taped down with a pH neutral masking tape. That will be in the video description. So it is acid-free. This is what I tape my work down with. I don't want to tape it with regular like blue masking tape. I've done that in the past. Don't recommend it unless you're cutting the edges off, then you wouldn't have to worry about it. But blue masking tape, regular masking tape, that's not acid-free. And so all of the tape is going to leave some residue on your artwork. And unless you're planning to chop that off, if you're cutting the tape part off, it's fine. But we don't want that residue sitting there because over time that could cause issues with discoloration and such. So that is why I am using the pH neutral, the black masking tape there. And it's not just that be aware of this, not all black masking tape is pH neutral. You need one that is actually labeled that way. So what I'm going to be starting with is my pan pastels. I've got this nice, let's back that up so you can see it a bit. Here we go. This set of, how many are in there? That is 5 and 4. So I've got a set of 20. You can get bigger sets than this. I don't know that it's necessary. There's never been a point where I felt I couldn't mix the color I needed. Like I just did a project I still need to edit, but I just did another one for Patreon of a little bird. It's got a pink background. And none of these pinks are the right pink. I just mixed these 3 colors and it's just like paint. You can mix any color you need. So that's one of the things that's so cool with pan pastels. You can get, like if you know you're gonna be using a color a lot, yeah, it would be more convenient just to buy that color. But you don't have to. Like this set of 20, I've got everything I need out of this. I've had this one for years and I've not needed to replace any. I've not needed to get more. So it's pretty cool. Make sure though that you do get this little palette it comes in. You can buy these. So it gives you a lid like that, if I can pull this off. And there we go. There's where all of them are setting. So that's going to make it much easier for you to organize those. And then of course, being able to put a lid on it's handy. I'm going to be using soft tools. So soft tools are kind of like these little palette knives, but they work great for pan pastels. I use them to blend charcoal. I use these for everything. Wonderful to work with. And they've got these little sponge guys on there, and that is what I'm going to apply the color with. Now in this case, I was using the other night one with pink, so I'm just going to go ahead and keep using that one. I can just wipe it on a paper towel. So that will clean enough of it off. And honestly, if I get pink in my background, great. It's spring, or that's what inspired me on this, to want to do this one. So I'm just going to lightly go over that. Now, don't go crazy scrubbing this because you will start to just damage it. And you want, when you buy the soft tools, the link for that should be in the video description. But get extras. I don't know if you can see how many I've got in there. I always buy the pack of extras because that way you can just swap them out as they get too dirty or you need to get more. This one, I'm going to be using various greens. So I can just pick, let's see, this one's like the chromium oxide. That looks like a good one. We'll probably use this one, and some white on this. And so I can just start going on there. And I'm going to go around the flower. Let's grab some of the more olivey green so I get some variation. Now this is going to seem way too dark. I'm going to come right on top of that with white after. And now as I layer in these initial areas, I do not care if anything is perfect or not blended well enough. None of that really matters right now. I just want to get some variation with the greens. I'm even going to pull some of my lime green in there. That's a pretty one. Now the Canson Me10s that I'm working on, I found it actually holds, even on the smooth side, it just holds the pigment really well. I didn't think it would work that well on the smooth side, but it does. And I'm just going to soften that as I get out to the edges there. So it fades. Just lightly going back and forth here. It's okay if some of my gray paper, like here where it's that soft gray, that's fine. I don't need to cover it completely. Same thing over here. Now, if some of this gets on the butterfly, it's not the end of the world, but it's way better if you just are more careful and don't make a huge mess. And I'm mixing some of these colors. I've got the 3 different greens. If you look at my palette here, this one, it looks kind of yellow on video, but this is more of a lime green. I'm going just randomly grabbing sections from each of these. So some are a little bit more yellowy, some are a little bit more green, some are kind of olive. And I mix right on, when I want to mix colors, I mix right in there. I know that drives some people crazy because they want everything to be super clean. I just don't have a problem with it. Like it's not a big deal if that ends up being messy. You can wipe it out if you need to. Just softly going through here. My goal right now for this step is just to get pigment on there. I just work that around the edges, just like you would a paintbrush. Twist and turn this as you need to if you're getting a smaller line. I just turn it to the side a bit. Okay. All just about there with the green. Now because I'm just going right over this green, I don't need to use a clean sponge. I can use what is already there to start adding some white. And see how pretty that lightens it up? Now, it's not going to make it straight white because it's blending in with what's already on the paper. It's very similar to oil paint when you're blending wet into wet, where it's going to mix with what's there. The great thing about doing the pan pastel as the underpainting is it saves so much time. You can get so much coverage so quick. Definitely more difficult with using straight colored pencil. And that's not to say that one's better than the other. It's just personal preference on what you're in the mood to work in. Especially if you're trying to get something super out of focus, that's easier to do with pan pastels. Easier and way faster in pan pastels than with colored pencil alone. But if I want more control, then I find it easier to work with colored pencil for the background and just put the effort into blending them. I'm going to just build up until I get that as bright as I want it to be. And the reason that I start with the background here is if I go over the subject, it doesn't matter. I've not painted that in. Once I start getting the detail there, I would be making a hot mess, but that doesn't matter because it's not done yet. So if I smudge into it, I don't really need to worry. But when I work on this area, I need to be careful anyway because it's small, so it's way easier to do that after the background. Okay. I think I'm going to make a little bit darker off to the side here. So I'm going to wipe some of the white. I'm just going to take my paper towel and wipe a little bit of that off. And then I can take some of the darker greens. Let's use some of this one here. And just put a little bit onto the side. Because this green is the same, I'm going to use some of that inside the flower stem as well. So this will tie it together nicely. I'm just going to wipe most of the green off and I'm going to soften that out. One of the cool things with green, this is a thing with home decor. Green is one of the colors that any shade of green, blue green, yellow green, olive green, all the greens look really good together. Whereas sometimes like if you're doing home decor stuff, this actually looks a little too blue on the camera, but if you're doing home decor stuff and you're mixing different blues, it looks a little weird. Usually you kind of like if you've got a warm blue, you don't want to start mixing in cool blues. It can be done and look okay, but it's a lot harder to make that work well. With greens, you can get away with lots of different greens and they just work. Lime green, blue green, it doesn't matter. They look good together. I'm just going to soften that out a bit now. I'm just very lightly smudging back and forth over this. So some of these you can see I've got circles, some of this it's just more soft smudges. Now I'm not worried about things being super crisp because I can blend that out or define it better, the opposite, define it better when I come on top with colored pencil. And I drew this out with a it was a polychromos that you could put mortem color. So it's kind of a burgundy brown color is what I drew this. I can't talk. Drew this on with. And if you guys have any requests for the upcoming live streams, let me know. I am definitely open for requests. Some things would be too time consuming and I can't do that, but you know, not everything will work for a live stream. But if you've got ideas or subject matter, go ahead and put in those requests for me. Sometimes I'll sit down to think of ideas and just be stumped. Now see here, I just went out. I kind of screwed up his face there. And I say screwed up, but it's not a big deal because all I'm going to do is soften that out. Just pull that out. Easy fix. Because if it's too white next to his face won't stand out. Okay, and then we have some, actually I'm going to hold you off. Let's go with the darker color. Got a little bit of black for the eye. And a little bit in his body. I'm just holding this so that the tip of the sponge there is barely touching. Okay, the rest can be done with colored pencil. So now we just need to fill in the flower. Oops, I'm going to punch the microphone. And I'm going to do the same thing where I mix the color. So I'm going to do magenta. I'm going to pull a little bit of red into that. And let's get some white mixed in. So I've got a pink. And I can go right on here. Because the pink that this comes with, or the magenta, it's a little bit too purpley for what I want on this flower. I need more of a red tone, but I don't want just straight red. Would be too peach almost. Like not, or almost a coral. So by mixing the two with the white, it gave me the look that I needed. And now this area, I'm just going to get some more white on there. We've got a little bit of white down at the base. Actually white and a bit of yellow. So we get that orangey tone down here. Really easy to get soft blending, but here's the trick. Don't overblend. You're going to be tempted like, oh, just a few strokes. It's so soft and it's so pretty. So more strokes will look softer and prettier. No, if you overdo it, you end up with one solid color. You don't have that definite. Like if you look here, we really want this to fade from that orangey tone up into the pink and then the white. So now we've got to do kind of the same thing. I'm going to use the same yellow that I used on, it's almost a yellow-orange, on the other part of the flower. Let's pull some here. Actually, I think I'll do a little bit of shading with brown on the butterfly before I start with the colored pencil, so we'll probably come back up there. I'm going to wipe that brush off, just kind of dabbing it on the paper towel. I'm going to grab some of that lime green. I'm going to put that down first. And then I'm going to switch to darker greens. And again, I'll define that all a lot better with the colored pencil. It doesn't need to be perfect. I'm just going to pull that up a little bit here. And darken this a bit more. Okay, now I'm going to switch over, clean that off, We've got, it's a burnt sienna that I'm going to use for a little bit of the wings here. A little bit more. Being a little too careful there with the pigment. There we go. Especially on the areas where we want it to be really soft. See how I can just hold this to the side and get a thinner line? All this would be easier to do for the most part with the colored pencil. I just want to get the stuff that's kind of soft done now with the pan pastels. Okay. He's got a little bit in here too. This, right now, super foggy, super out of focus looking. You didn't do anything wrong. It's supposed to basically look terrible right now. This is just our base layer. What I'm going to do is take Spectrafix, which I don't have the main bottle here, but I've got this. You want to take Spectrafix and put, or whatever fixative you're going to use, a workable fixative. Spectrafix is my favorite because it doesn't darken it. It doesn't mess anything up like some sprays do. So with this, I put it in a fine mist sprayer, and this should be linked in the video description. The reason that I go with a fine mist sprayer, if you take the Spectrafix, it has like a little pump spray. If you spray that, you'll get these heavy droplets that will leave marks on your artwork that you can blend them out. It's not the end of the world, but then you have to blend them out. With this, it's so much finer. It is way less likely that you're going to have an issue with that. Sometimes I'll have a little area where I went too heavy and I'll blend it. It's not, like I said, not end of the world. But if I can avoid it, I'm going to do that. So what I'm going to do is just take this guy, and I want to be about, I'd say maybe 12 inches away, and I'm just lightly going to go over this. Now you are better off doing several light layers than one big heavy layer. I don't know if you can see, there's a couple of heavy droplets here that I'll have to blend out. But next I'm going to take my hairdryer and I'm going to dry this, because what'll happen is that spray will cause the paper to start to warp. By taking the hairdryer, this is going to make sure it dries completely flat. Okay, now you may not be able to see it, but there is a little bit of a dark spot in two areas. So because of the spray, me going a little heavy-handed there. So what I'm going to do is take the blender and just lightly go over it. Actually, it's not dry all the way. I'm making that worse. Okay, I'm going to go over that when it dries all the way. That is just not working out as planned. It's a little bit wet apparently, and it's sticking to it. So once it dries, I can go back over that. But that's all you would do, is just take your blending tool and go right back over it wherever something was a little bit like too thick of a drop. So next, we need to put glassine on the work, because to use the colored pencil, I'm going to want to rest my hand to stabilize it. And without glassine, I'm going to end up with pastel all over the side of my hand. I'm going to get my greasy hand, I mean, they're not greasy, they're very clean. I'm kind of neurotic about that actually. But you still have oil from your skin will get on the artwork. People juice, not archival. We don't want that on the artwork. And we don't want to smudge things. We don't like, just put some glassine down. At the very least, put down another piece of paper. If tracing paper, art paper, whatever. The thing is, those other papers can still smudge as you move them around. With the glassine, nothing sticks to it, so it's less likely to smudge. It's also archival. If you work in colored pencil, graphite, any pencil type medium where you want to rest your hand on your work, invest in some glassine. It is not expensive. A roll of it will last you for years. I'm going to just start with the eye. So I've got my polychromos. Now the reason that I'm going with polychromos for these, two-part. One, I used them on my last project and I'm very lazy. So if I don't have to get up and get my other pencils out, bonus. But the real reason is that these are going to be able to sharpen to a finer point, and that's what I need at this point. My favorite colored pencils are the Faber-Castell Polychromos I'm using right now, Derwent Lightfast, and I do have a couple, actually, when I use my white, I'll switch over to my Derwent Lightfast. But all my, oh God, I love Derwent Lightfast are just wonderful pencils to work with, and Caran d'Ache Luminance. But they all have, like, some of them have better, like, if I want purples, Derwent Lightfast is 100% the way to go. If, in this case, I just want finer detail with a longer pointed pencil, then the Faber-Castell Polychromos is going to be a stronger pencil for that. So they all, like, it's not that one is the absolute best. I couldn't choose. My two go-to are usually Prismacolor. Never Prismacolor with that. Wow. My normal two that I go to are either my Polychromos or my Derwent Lightfast. Those are generally going to cover all my bases. But sometimes the Caran d'Ache just has a color that isn't in the other set, and then I'm really glad I have that. So And I'm just taking my black. I'll come back through with a little bit of brown too. Let's fluff him up. Let's see. This has a bluish gray color in there, so I'm going to pull out my gray. I'm going to use that gray for part of his little legs. A little bit of fluff on his legs. He didn't shave for the winter. And he's got his little tongue or whatever they're called. Someone can correct me. I don't know what they are. So these two look good. I've got my burnt sienna and sanguine. I can't say words. Another little bit here with the burnt sienna. Now this wing out here, I'm not going to really do anything. Okay, I lied. A little bit. But I want it to stay out of focus, so I'm not doing much over there. And now just look at your reference photo. Where are your lights and darks? Just copy what you see there. It doesn't have to be exact, but you do want it close. Now you can use odorless mineral spirits if you need to over pan pastels. Just make sure that you spray it first. If you don't spray it with the fixative and then you go over that with the pan pastels, it can kind of turn into a weird waxy mess. It kind of lifts up. It's just weird. In this case, I don't need to use OMS, or I shouldn't need to use OMS for anything. I'm just burnishing. So I sharpen that pencil. I really need it very sharp since I'm not going to be using OMS, hopefully. Little dots in here for some detail. So now it's really easy. I'm just looking at that reference photo. Where do I see lines? And dots are your friends. We want dots. Another thing that's really cool. So a lot of him, he has this very fuzzy look to him. So colored pencil, if you don't push hard, as you're going, it looks fuzzy. It looks kind of furry. Normally, it's not something I like. That's why I don't. It's like dry brushing with painting. It's just not a look I typically like. But sometimes that texture is called for. This butterfly's wings are one of those. So where it looks like grainy and gritty, where I normally would be like, oh, I don't really like that. For this, it's perfect. So we're actually glad to have that texture. See, in here, as I lightly go over this, it makes it grainy and gritty, but that, again, that's what it should look like. So don't feel like where normally you'll hear me say in a lot of my lessons, I talk about not liking the grainy and gritty look. There are times where you want it. Got a little bit of black down in here. Now right now, because I'm just using the raw sienna, everything's starting to look a little bit on the flat side, like it's all the same color. I will come back through with other browns and gold, like reddish tones, and get some variation in there. Some of this we want a more sketchy look. So I'm moving that pencil back and forth so it's not too straight. It also adds to that fluff look. Or fuzzy wings. I'm going to move over to that sanguine for some of this that should be a little bit more orange. Get a little bit more around here. And then this whole area is a lot darker with that orangey sanguine tone. The sanguine's nice because it has a more orange glow to it, but it's not like in your face orange. See, this whole area is a lot darker. As we get close to the body, it kind of melds together there. Much better. And for those of you over on Patreon, today I had, or no, yesterday, the final portion of the horse, you can't see him, but the oil painting portion, the step 2 or part 2, that went up yesterday, but technically it was last week's video because I was late. Like, it just took longer because of the dry time. So I did a quick beginner, like super beginner lesson for any of you who are looking for more, like, just, it's a real time. I think it's like 45 minutes. I have to edit it still, but it looks like it's going to be about that long. But it's a cute little bird with a pink background. Like, I'm excited. It's cute. So that should be up in a couple of days or this weekend. So you do have another video coming this week to make up for last week being later. And I owe you, for those of you who are in the aqua and teal tiers, I owe you guys your like 2 coloring pages. So that'll be coming too. Okay, back to work. See, this whole edge out here has more, actually I'm going to switch over to the sanguine. It's a little bit frayed, so I'm just doing sketchy lines, just straight back and forth. Okay, a few little details. And then I've got to come back through. I'll use Caput Mortem for a lot of this. Just little shading on what's already there. Now, this does not need to be exact. I looked at several of these guys, and there was actually enough variation in the wing pattern that some of them I wasn't even sure if it was the same type of butterfly. They were all listed as the same. So if you're a little bit off, don't freak out or think you have to start over. It does not need to be exact. There's certain things in art we need to be exact on. This is not one of them. So I've got some brown here. This one is burnt umber. It's a little bit darker. If you look at that reference photo, again, that's over on my website, you can see where we've got a few dark areas. Actually, I'm going to switch over to my Caput Mortem. That is the same color that I drew this guy out with initially. Now, let me show you too. This is actually a good example. When you sharpen your pencils with the polychromos, I can go, this one's not even that sharp. Oops, on camera. I can go super long, super pointed, and that's not very likely to break. If I'm sharpening another pencil, especially let's say a Prismacolor, not that I use Prismacolor, but let's pretend I hated myself and was okay with pencils breaking nonstop, then I'm going to switch over to a sharpener that's going to be a shorter point so that it's not as likely to break. I mean, let's be real, Prismacolors are going to break because the clouds shifted in the wrong position. But you can make it a little bit easier on yourself by not having that point super, super long. So there you go. That just happened to be the sharpener I picked up, and that's why the Polychromos is getting the short sharpener, but it doesn't need it. It can handle the really long pointed sharpener. I have a Coom long pointed sharpener that I broke the lid on yesterday. But this one with the double points, this can get me super long points, but it's really only useful for my Polychromos. The rest of them are more likely to break if I go that long. And then, of course, if you're somebody who uses Prismacolor, then the shorter point is going to be ideal. Now, some of these lines are a little darker than I wanted. No worries, because I'm going to go over this with white and it'll tone them right down. I want variation where some of these lines are a little thinner, a little thicker. I'm going to use the Compote Mortem too for some of his little fuzzy stripes. I'll go back over some of this with black. You know, I'm lifting the pencil, so I make a line, lift it, make another line, and this is giving me that fuzzy look. It's not a scribble zigzag back and forth. That is not the look we want. So it's line, lift, line, lift, line, lift. Okay, and I've got a few different whites we can try. I've got the Caran d'Ache Pablo white. Let's see how this shows up. Now the Pablo pencil, this is one I get asked about a lot. The Caran d'Ache Pablo pencils are not, I've seen them listed as oil-based. I've seen them listed as wax-based. They are to Caran d'Ache Luminance what Prismacolor Very Thins are to Prismacolor. Both wax-based. So in this case, the Caran d'Ache Luminance, and some people have contacted, it's kind of funny, some people have contacted Caran d'Ache, and I've seen emails, like the actual emails where their employees, one person said, oh, they're oil-based. Another person's like, they're wax-based. They're all a combination of wax, oil, clay, all that fun stuff. It's just a matter of how much wax, how much oil, whatever, as artists, what we talk about when we say oil-based, wax-based. Caran d'Ache Luminance are higher wax content. That's why they're more opaque. It's also why they're softer, they blend really smooth, but they're going to be more likely to break than a higher oil-based content pencil like Polychromos. The very thin, because it's kind of the same, Caran d'Ache Pablos, like I said, very similar to Prismacolor Very Thin. Even when I used Prismacolors, I didn't like the very thins. They just do not work great for my technique. So, but some people swear by them. So it really is going to depend on you and how you're applying the pencil. That doesn't mean like that the Pablos are terrible. Not all the Pablos are light fast, so something to keep in mind. But the one thing that I found that I like Pablos on, and I've only got a few colors. I've got black, white, and I think like a pink or something like that. But I like them for my top layers when I'm working on sanded paper. I'm not working on sanded paper today. I don't expect to love the results of this. I'll give it a try, but I'm probably going to switch over to a higher wax, like the Caran d'Ache, words are still hard, Derwent Lightfast, because that one is just, it's a better pencil. Okay, so let's get back to this. And I'm going to try my Pablo, see how I like that, and my Caran d'Ache. And that's one of the things that you want to remember with art. I think a lot of times we have a tendency to think that artists always know all the answers to everything. Like, going into this, I know I'm going to use this color, and that pencil, and this. No, I don't. I'm going to experiment. I'm going to experiment till it looks good. And that is pretty much going to be your entire career. I mean, you're going to get experience. You're going to have a better idea of this pencil worked good for that technique. This one I liked for this one. You'll get an idea of which ones to grab for, but you're constantly, throughout your entire artistic journey, will be experimenting. Right now, I genuinely don't know if I'm going to like this one or the Derwent Lightfast better. I suspect Derwent Lightfast, but I want to give this one a try. So here we go. Let's see. I still hate it. It just does not work for how I layer my pencils. Let's see. Yeah. They're actually kind of similar. The Pablo is extremely waxy feeling, like too much like Prismacolor Very Thin, which is why I didn't like them. I don't know why. Sometimes I think I might like them, but you never know. Okay, so I'm going to go around the edge. Yeah, this is much better. And I don't say that about Pablos for you to be like, well, I'm not going to bother trying those. I mean, I would say that about Holbein, or Prismacolor. But in this case, it's an issue of, I just don't like them for my techniques. My issues with Holbein and Prismacolor are separate, but, well, kind of. So, in part, I would give, like with the Pablos, what I did normally when I get colored pencils, I get the biggest set I can find on things that I want to test. I really wasn't sure on those, so I bought a few, thank God, because they're very expensive and I don't love them. So I was actually happy I didn't love them. But that doesn't mean they're not good. It means they didn't work great for my specific techniques. I've seen people, what they could do with them, and they were amazing. I mean, even Prismacolor, I've seen people get great. Well, I've gotten good work with Prismacolors. Not as good as what I can get with other brands. Yeah, with Prismacolor, my bigger issue, besides them breaking constantly, they are not very light fast. Like half of them, I think there were 50 or there were more than 50 of the Prismacolor that were not light fast. So it wasn't half, it was like a third. I forget what the numbers were. It's been years since I looked into it. So they're just not my favorite. But I mean, I can make something look good with Prismacolor. So if I'm talking about not liking Prismacolor or not liking this other brand, don't feel like you can't produce amazing work with it. You absolutely can. Some of the best artwork I've ever seen has been done with Prismacolors. So it can be, now that artist, those same artists I'm thinking of have switched over to Caran d'Ache Luminance or whatever, and their artwork is still amazing. So it's not like Prismacolor is what made them. If it was more of if I can do this with Prismacolor, I can do this with anything. But you can do great work with it. So I don't want you to feel like you can't, because I know I bash it a lot. I can't stand their quality control and the fact that they're not light fast. So a lot of them aren't light fast. Light fast is how we determine how long a color will last before it starts to fade. So if a color has low light fast ratings, it might fade. Certain purples and pinks, especially indigo blues, like certain colors within 2 years, if it is in even indirect sunlight, will be it basically disappears. It won't be as vivid. It won't be as bright. So if you're selling your artwork and somebody spends hundreds or thousands of dollars, they expect that to last, not fade in a few years. And then the higher the light fast number is, the longer it's going to last. So ideally, you want something that's going to last 50 to 100 years minimum. Anything less than that is getting a bit shady. And if you're curious about Holbein, I've done a whole review on why I would not buy anything from that company again after how they treated me. And like, they obviously, the only people I know of that they treated well knew they were going to make a video out of it. I contacted them just as a normal customer. Yeah, they just dismissed me. I wasn't important enough to them to look into it or whatever. But there's some questionable stuff with their light fast ratings. There's some questionable stuff with their ingredients. We know they use animal fat, is what I've been told by some people. Like, there's some questionable stuff that it's not that I'm like, it's fine, but let people know. There's some definite, I did a review, just look up Lachri and Holbein and you'll see. They're neat pencils to work with, but I don't trust them. I would not be buying anything from them again. And the funny thing is, I used to use their airbrush paint. I won't use that anymore either. Like, if you are questionable on the colored pencils, are you questionable on all your supplies? I don't know. I'm not going to trust you. Total side rant. I'm pushing pretty hard here. So I'm making these areas brighter, but I'm also going over some of the lines that are there to soften them up. Yeah, it kind of a follow-up too on the Holbein stuff. I've had people contact me where they're like, well, Holbein told me this. Holbein said this one was the light fast, and they released this other information. They never got back to me. They never corrected it with me. All I can go by is what they told me, and what they told me was not good. And what the Colored Pencil Society's results, or Colored Pencil Society of America, their results were very not favorable. Like, light fast did not match up with what Holbein claims theirs are. So I do not, like, I expect some discrepancies, because of the methods that Colored Pencil Society uses are not like the same as the machines. But Holbein couldn't even tell me how they light fast. It was a mess. I do not trust that company. Maybe I'm just jaded though. I don't trust a lot. I'm gonna make a highlight going down here. I'm gonna use a little bit of blue here. Just give a blue tint in there. I'm going to put a little bit of blue over the eye, and that's going to make it look a little bit darker black than just black, which is funny. So here's a cool thing with black that you might not realize. If you do just black, it's going to look flat. It won't look as dark as if you mix blue, purple, red, something else in with it will look even darker. So nice little thing there. Okay, I think the butterfly is about done. I reserve the right to make any little minor adjustments when my eyes are rested tomorrow. And I'm going to start on the flower. This will be pretty quick because this is not really our focus. And let me fix it on this. And as a side note, as I fix this, a lot of people, you have a lot of videos out there. Holbein's the best colored pencil out there. Holbein used to be harder to get, and I suspect, and it's still very expensive. It is one of the most expensive colored pencils. But I honestly suspect a lot of the reviews, this one is the magenta, and I've also got Bordeaux. Actually, Bordeaux is probably better for a lot of this. A little bit darker. I'm going to pull a little bit of this magenta, just a couple spots in here. I'm going to take a little bit of my sanguine and mix those together because anytime I use magenta, there's going to be orange right next to it, and this is close enough to orange. I don't want to just grab a completely different orange because I want to, as much as possible, use colors I've already used in this piece so that everything flows together nicely. Switch over to Caput Mortem because it's a similar enough color for these shadows, but it's a sharper pencil. It gets in those little nooks and crannies better for what I'm doing. Again, I'm pushing pretty hard here. I do need the brighter magenta as I move in here. I'll put a little bit of white on top of it too. I'll burnish white over it. See which white looks better. We've got, yep, that one. I'm going to go with my polychromos white. So I'm not trying to lighten it that much. I really just want to smooth it out to burnish, and that's working great. If I want more opaque, I'm going to go with a higher wax-based content pencil. Take some sanguine. Let's get a little bit of orange in here. I say orange, but again, it's kind of a muted orange. It's not orange orange. Okay, now I need some greens. So I'm going to start with Hooker's green. I'm going to clean that edge up. So I'm pushing pretty hard because I want that to be a nice, clean edge. Now, you don't want to just leave lines like that. That obviously looks terrible. We're going to be going through now and shading that. This one is Hooker's green. I've got some lighter greens that I can mix in with it, and then I'll burnish white on top again for where I need it to be lighter. Actually, this green, this one is light green. Oh, that is something I would have named it. That's a good name. But we're going to go right over that, and I'm burnishing over this so it blends nicely. I'm going to go back over to that Hooker's green and pull that down further. Darken some of these little creases. I'm going to take my white and blend over. Actually, I need more green. This one is, I think it's grass green. Yeah, grass green. It's a little bit of a darker, but still light. I may use OMS to blend this to smooth it out. I think I will. Let's see if this blends it how I want. Oh, that white does look good. got a little bit of fluff where the light's hitting. Oh, good, that shows up nicely. I was worried about that. Oops, broke the tip. Now, anytime you use OMS, make sure you're not going over that wet paper again. So right now, I'm not going to go over the edges or do anything else to this. Maybe at the end of the stream, if there's anything that needs any touch up, but it has to be completely dry in order to go back over it, or you will damage the paper. So this is just a little bit of odorless mineral spirits, and look how smooth that comes out. It's going to dry lighter than what it is. This makes it darker. So don't worry if you're like, whoa, that came out too dark. I mean, I could always lighten it if needed, but this will really lighten up a lot as it dries. Because I'm working, if I do this, if I blend with OMS on like a hot press watercolor paper, a white paper, it doesn't get darker when you blend OMS over it, or not significantly. When you use a colored paper like this, it gets super, super dark. So that is normal. Now, I can work on the butterfly a little bit while that dries, but this also, when you're working on the Canson Me10s, it's a little bit more absorbent. It takes longer to dry, so that is going to have to set for a bit before I can do touch-ups. And he's just about done. Oh, I haven't even done his face. It's funny how when you sit in front of something for so long, you can miss something so obvious. A little highlight here on his eye. How in the world did I miss your face, buddy? That is just sad. So I'm going to use the gray and create more fluff. Circles around his eye a bit. And then I'm going to switch over to Caput Mortem. I'm going to get a little bit out here. Much better. Oh, and his legs aren't done either. So right now his legs are all one color. I'm going to come back through on a few spots with black. Let's see, that elbow and his knee. And then I switched over to the sanguine for areas where it's a lot lighter, the way the light's hitting. Put a little into the shadow here. I'm going to go over it with white, though. That's a little too dark. There it is. Much better. And then this is the stage where I can just sit and work on little details, especially being that I need this to dry anyway. But he's got like little furry marks coming out of his wing here. We've got a line of white. Let's see if the Pablos worked for that one well. Yeah, it's okay. Nope, I still like the luminance better. I keep giving it a chance. Or not luminance, the Derwent Light Fast. Now this being wet, it's okay if my glassine goes over it. I just don't want to work a pencil over an area that's wet. One, the pencil won't stick well anyway, but two, it can really damage the paper. So I'm pushing really hard there, right on that outer edge. And I'll probably spend maybe 15 minutes or so just cleaning little things up that, like right there, I just found a spot I had missed earlier. Like there'd just be little things that when you sit in front of something for an hour, you just start to lose sight of. So you want to come back with fresh eyes and do any touch-up work. And I would recommend that no matter what you're working on, no matter how long you've sat looking at something, when you think you're done, plan on coming back the next day with fresh eyes and doing more touch-ups. Like get it to the point where you're like, okay, it's done. But I also know I'm going to come back and do at least a few little things before you like actually varnish it or finish it. Now, luckily with this, let's say I spray it with the Texture Fix or with the Spectra Fix, I can always go back over that. That you can work on top of, so it's not a big deal. But let's say you're doing an oil or acrylic painting. You don't go over it. Once it's varnished, that's it. I'm pushing really hard there because that paper is already flattened pretty well. Let's see back here, the little darker fluffs are a bit thicker. Almost done. Well, minus the touch-ups. Actually, that is dry enough now. I can put some of the white little hairs over it. It's more dry than I expected it to be. No, this is a standard 8x10, so it's going to fit an 8x10 frame or mat. And that will fit into a standard 11 by 14 inch frame. So that's the overall size this will be done, or what will hang on your wall. And you just take an open or a mat like that. And I use, actually that will, oh, I still need to sign it. That will sit like that. And look how much it pulls attention here. The difference that a mat makes is so huge. And you could go, like, if the person who buys this wanted a rose color mat, just go with something, or even a brown. You could get away with that, and it'll pull those colors out more. So this one, I need to sign still. When I mat this, I would use a clean one, but this one sits in here as my sample. But I use an acid-free masking tape or acid-free tape to tape the artwork to the mat itself, just along the edges, and it has to be acid-free. Like, that is something I cannot stress enough. Has to be acid-free tape, especially in this case. That's going to sit permanently on there, so make sure you tape that. And then in my case, these that I buy come with backing, so I would use double-sided acid-free tape again and mat or put the backing on it, just a white backing, and that's it. And then you can pop this into, this one goes into an 11 by 14 inch frame. And it's nice if you can do stuff that's a common size. I get these on Amazon from Golden State Art. I don't think I need to put a link in the video description, but these are, I get the ones that come with the backing. It comes with a bag. So let's say you're doing an art show and you wanted to map prints or your own original artwork. That's a really good way to go if you're buying in bulk. Or you can go over to like Michael's. It's about $5 usually to get the pre-made, like just single. It doesn't have the backing. It doesn't have a bag, so it doesn't look as nice. But if you're just hanging it on your own wall, then that is a much cheaper way to go if you just need one or two mats. Okay, so, signing it. Now I need to decide. So let's see, this mat will hit about there. And I like the weight of the signature over here. You want to make sure you always hold your mat up. Hold on. Oops. You want to check with the mat where the signature is going to be, because if I didn't, I might want to sign down at the bottom edge. Okay, the mat's going to hit that. My paper's bigger so that it can be matted right. If I sign down here, your mat just completely covered it. So I want to hold the mat where this is going to look its best and then figure out where my signature needs to go.